morning. This is the very best. The morning becomes eclectic. KCRW, you are listening to the best band that's come through. The most African band you've ever heard. We're happy to be here. Stay in school.
This is evaporated. All the boys move back. Take it slow up, holding someone. Tell us when to go. Beatbox imaginary in the show. All your shelters lined up. Number all your favorite breaks. Your favorite ELO. Please tell me when to go. Please tell me when to go. Please tell me when to go. Please tell me when to go.
KCRW, wake up!
One heart of Africa, kuli magule, magule okoma. Iwende, lichopa malanje, ngoma bimuza, masete nenganza. Iwende, musada bwedi, kama vina ile kule wapatu. Iwende, kumwela wa Afrika, kulitiko limoti, lo chetwa Malawi.
It's evaporating down. And when the boys move fast, just take it slow. It's always where to go. Beatbox imaginary, the show, and all your shelters line up. You will know your favorite breaks, your favorite ELO. It's evaporating down. And when the boys move fast, just take it slow. It's always where to go. Beatbox imaginary, the show, and all your shelters line up. You will know your favorite breaks, your favorite ELO. Say, please tell me when to go. Please tell me when to go. Please tell me when to go. Please tell me when to go.
Msanduzene simona inu mkamenda mukero inu simona mavuto koma yo amasirira inu yo akusawa ndizo fala zo mwana okala mukero koma inu Mungu sewereta komayo amasirira inuyo namwanenesa sata namwanenesa koyo namwanenesa mama namwanenesa andekoyolisa namwanenesa dada namwanenesa mama namwanenesa ko dada ko mama yo.
Work is done, end of the day. Only thing we hear is what you're throwing away. Don't you? The ghetto makes a king of and
simzi wanga kale sukulu yana okuwulira mugero amapuzitira maganyo nditwiwo amasirira inuyo ngakale mumajapunga wanukuma watilira nkoko iwa makukundanibe nditwiwo amasirira inuyo.
work is done, end of the day. Only thing we hear is what you're throwing away. Don't you? The ghetto makes a king of and the ghetto makes a king of and still loves you. The ghetto makes a king of and still loves you. There's an echo we think of and still love you.
This is a world-exclusive first ever performance of Guju Guju by the very best on our favorite station, KCRW. The morning becomes eclectic. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Guju kwenda ngasitima guju waukanyanga mtima wanga manjanga timbambam guju kwenda ngasitima guju waukanyanga mtima wanga manjanga timbambam wapita uko kutali kumudzi kwanu kumangoni uko kuseli kwa pili kundisiya ndikungolira mama we. Usiku kangofika kumangolingalira ndigona bwanji ndeka opanda iwe dale mama we. Alelo kwendanga sitima lelo, alelo kwendanga sitima lelo, guju guju kwendanga sitima guju, waukanyanga mtima wanga manjanga timbambam, guju guju kwendanga sitima guju, waukanyanga mtima wanga manjanga timbambam. Ndinkaona monga zocheza tsiku lomwe unkapita mtima wanga sunalimbe ndinakusowa tsiku lomwe lo otalewe. Gujuguju monga sitima wagwedeza mtima wanga ndalepera kupilira mbwerera sanga uliko otalewe. Alelo kwendanga sitima lelo, alelo kwendanga sitima lelo, guju guju kwendanga sitima guju, waukanyanga mtima wanga manjanga timbambam, guju guju kwendanga sitima guju, iwe waukanyanga mtima wanga manja monga mbambam. Alelo kwendanga sitima guju, alelo kwendanga sitima lelo, alelo kwendanga sitima lelo, alelo kwendanga sitima lelo. Lelo mwataya chipangano kuyambo pembeza makavalo alikutiyo soyo atabwela liti tifuna chipulumutso. Ulendo wochokera kwa ikuputo unali wa utali nati wolotayo lodani bwino bwino nangalelo bwanji kabwino kose upange ulalike utakwela chulu na marenga sako ndwanazo koto yako utalandiratu wanyoza mchungu wanga iwe walakwa wapeta mtundu wanga ndati walakwa nditi walakwa alikuti yosoyo azakwela liti tifuna chipulumutso sitifuna moseuna wakambakamwa wotalisocheleta alikuti yosoyo azakwela liti tifuna chipulumutso sitifuna moseuna wakambakamwa wotalisocheleta. Siani dumbo, siani umbombo, tato panazo inusimu kuona kutili chandikale. Sia umbanda, sia zatika wenga, kodi watani mwesi ukutiwa kuti kupandisa mbi. Siani dumbo, yeah me now, yeah me now, yeah me now. Sia umbanda, yeah me now, yeah me now, yeah me now. Soup 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 boo. Soup, 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 soup. Sia kaduka, sia zakonda kuba. Sia nichinyengo kuyambila lelo tienti konze tsokolo. Sia nikukona, sia kugona tulo. Kunja kwacha kodi simu kuona kuti dzuwa latuluka. Sia nikukona, yeah me now, yeah me now, yeah me now. See a nigga do yeah me now, yeah me now, yeah me now. Taka makuma sanu, zatak fika lelo, mpaka lelo mpawi. Kungo pa betiko, taka makuma sanu, zatak fika lelo, mpaka lelo mpawi kungo pabetiko taka makumasanu zata kufika lelo mpaka lelo mpawi kungo pabetiko taka makumasanu zata kufika lelo mpaka lelo mpawi kungo pabetiko taka makumasanu zata kufika lelo mpaka lelo mpawi kungo pabetiko taka makumasanu zata kufika lelo mpaka lelo mpawi kungo pabetiko asup sup subudubu 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 asup sup subudubu.
Let go, let go. Let go, oh, oh, oh.
Moyo wako ndi watengo watatali.
Let go, let go.
Ndala masisi moyo.
Let go, oh, oh.
Zili petito usauke. Ungalemele iwe. Ndicho ndala masisi chuluka. Chafunika kungo upeza mtima kwani zidwa ndizo mwe ulinazo moyo umaposa silver golide usada ndo uleza ndalama
Let go, let go.
usazunzite moyo wako
Let go, oh, oh, oh.
moyo wako ndi watengo wakatali
Let go, let go.
ndala masisi moyo
Let go, oh, oh, oh.
iwe zili petito zofunika pa moyo wako iwe limbikila mpaka utapeza zonse ngati na malenga na lemba kale tikuli na utachita wino oh, oh, oh. Mankwacha, mankwacha, mankwacha. I'm a 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 mankwacha, mankwacha, mankwacha. See ya kudanda unazandala
Julia, let go.
usazunzite moyo wako
Julia, let go.
moyo wako ni watengo wabatali
Let go, let go.
ndala masisi moyo
Julia, let go.
iwe sili bechito
Julia, usatelo.
Julia, wherever
Julia, usatelo. Julia,
wherever
Julia, usatelo.
Julia, wherever
Julia,
iwe usatelo
Julia,
The Very Best first came on our radar at KCRW back in 2009 with the track Warm Heart of Africa, which featured a really beautiful vocal performance by Vampire Weekend's Ezra Koenig. The band is led by a Swedish-Malawian duo, producer Johan Hugo and singer Essa Mwamwaya, and they just finished up a North American tour with a show here a couple of shows in LA, actually. So, guys, first of all, welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much.
Good morning and great to have you here. Before we go any further, just want to make sure we give a shout out to all the guys that played today with you guys in the studio.
We had Cher, guitars, vocal, and Juddy Taylor, bass, guitar. Everybody plays everything. We like everybody switch around, apart from me, who plays nothing.
The mastermind at the same time.
I'm a silent master in the background.
So, a burning question of mine ever since I first, I guess, saw the name of the band, because I was like, wait, The Very Best what? You know? Then it was like, oh, that's the name of the band, is The Very Best. That's a very bold statement, and I wanted to know the story about the name of the band. Like, that's kind of crazy.
The band used to be, like, the core of the band used to be three of us on the first album. This other guy, Etienne, who left the band in 2011. But when we started working with Essa, and it was always going to be Essa Mwamwaya. It was going to be his project. We were just going to produce it. But nobody could pronounce Essa Mwamwaya. Not even a manager could do it. So after a while, and we started to realize, we wanted to do it all together and keep it as like more of a semi-band thing. But Etienne's little cousin had a band a couple of years previous called The Very Best. And when we found out about that, we always used to tease him and say, it's like the day you guys break up, we're going to take that name. And literally, like, within a couple of weeks of us realizing we needed a band name, we found out that they'd broken up. So we're like, okay, well, we're going to take a name. It was more like a joke, but it stuck.
That's awesome. Well, the next thing is, what a rich story about a Swede and a Malawian coming together to make music, and I'm really curious about how that happened. Johan, were you traveling and just kind of accidentally came across Essa? Like, how did that whole thing? Because this is a multi-international, triple coastal kind of thing we're talking about here, where you guys kind of discovered each other. Like, how did that happen?
We met in London. I've been living in London for the last 14 years, and Essa spent 9 years in London. The whole Warm Heart of Africa album was made in London, just after we met there, basically. Essa ran a second-hand shop outside my studio. That's how I met him. We bought a bike from him, and he told us he was a drummer. We invited him to the studio, and he ended up singing.
What were you recording in your studio at the time?
I was actually working with this English rapper called Kano, this grime rapper, and the beat or the instrumental track that Essa sang on that first day was for Kano, but he just did it so well, so we kept it. The song is called Chalo. It's on the first Warm Heart of Africa album, and that was literally our first day in the studio. We did that one song.
So Essa, you're a drummer. How did you end up? Did you just volunteer like some background vocals or something? And how did that happen? How did you start singing?
I was just kind of trying, to sing on top of his beats. I didn't know how good, how sounding, but he said he sounds like you can sing as well. So can we try to, do some recordings? I said, okay, let's do it. Maybe that was my chance also to exercise my vocals, So as he says, we ended up, doing a song on the same night, which is Chalo, like he said. But somehow I knew I could sing anyway. It's only that I did not necessarily discover myself fully, the potential of me being a singer until I met Johan. And that's when I knew, exactly what I can do with my voice. Yeah.
It feels like there's such a rich variety and array of influences in the sound. It's so South African, not just because it's festive and it's positive, because it touches on all types of aspects of, just human life in general. But the sound itself, when I first heard, let's just say Warm Heart of Africa, because that's where it first started for a lot of the DJs here, But getting into more of the record, it was like, okay, I'm hearing like Ladysmith Black Mambazo, I'm hearing Kwaito, I'm hearing Zulu, like I'm hearing all these amazing South African influences in the sound. Is that just by, nature of Johan, your interest in the region, in the sound, in the sort of history, or Essa, just kind of like where you come from and kind of infusing that into the music? And it's very electronic, but we'll get into this, but the latest record is probably the least electronic sounding so far. There's a lot more sort of live instruments, so we'll talk about that in a moment. But the influence. Talk about the influences of the sound.
Around the time when I met Essa, with our production team, me and Etienne, the guy I was talking about earlier, we were so heavily just influenced by anything foreign and unexplored type of music, like anything from baile funk in Rio or Brazil or kuduro in Angola, and we're just like constantly on a search for new kinds of music, dance music mainly. And I think that's just something we've taken away. Like the way we approach music then is like similar to now. It's like there was never a genre or a sound. For me, it's like the very best is all about Essa's voice. It's like that's the thread that kind of like ties it all together. If you just had an instrumental album of ours, it could be so many different things. I think maybe on the last record, we're finding for the first time in 3 albums a sound a little bit more. But before then, it's always just whatever we feel like doing that day, and it might be so different. Like Guju Guju, which is amazing you've been playing, which is kind of reggae, dubby inspired, and very like the vocal of that is very traditional Malawian.
Very traditional, yeah.
But or you go from that up to a song to like Makes a King, that's like more borderlining on some kind of stadium rock thing.
Yeah.
But it's literally what we feel like doing that day, but that's what's so great for us, or for me, and I think for both of us, with the very best, because we kind of have that freedom, or we don't put that boundary, or like put ourselves in a box. So we can do that. At the same time, I think it's confusing for a lot of people. And I think it's been to our detriment to a certain extent, because people just can't get their head around what we're supposed to be doing.
There's a really great story, the narrative for like the making of this Makes a King album. Like Airbnb is involved in this story, right? I was reading about that somewhere, and I just wanted you guys to kind of talk about, being in the city and then wanting to get out of the city, kind of having the idea to go someplace a little bit more remote to record this album, and kind of what ensued after that, and how this album came together. I mean, you were recording outside, to my understanding. You were like out in front of the house. I mean, this reminds me of like Jimi Hendrix Band of Gypsies, when those guys were just kind of hanging out at the house, just recording, and people would come by, and it was a very organic process, and it sounds like a very similar.
It's exactly, it's like, I think we've always, the very best has always been confined to something. It's like, Essa cannot travel the way we Westerners can. He needs a visa wherever we go. So it's like we always have restrictions on what we can do and how we do it, how much money it's going to take. Everything's expensive or whatever. It's like we always have these things that make things a bit difficult for us. And the second album, MTMTMK, we recorded partly in New York, in Sweden, and Malawi. But the Malawi sessions was the biggest chunk. But we did it in the capital, and there was a lot of distraction, and just like we never kind of felt like we had that relaxed environment. And, just like you say with Jimi Hendrix and, the Rolling Stones sessions from south of France, where they just rolled in with his truck and all their mates and just hung out for a few months. And we wanted something remote, isolated, where we can create our own bubble and just work out of that bubble. And we've been wanting to record a whole record outdoors for a long time. We've been talking about it because we're very into random sounds and environmental sounds and weird acoustics and stuff like that. And it kind of started just from the fact that a lot of times when you work somewhere where you don't have a studio that sounds good, it's like a vocal performance will always sound better outdoors than in a shitty room. Sorry. That's kind of how it started. And when we started talking about it, it was hard first to find something that felt a house or something that felt right. And I went on Airbnb, and if you go on Airbnb for Malawi, there's about 3 houses on there, 2 that you would never set foot in, and 1 which is like a mansion on the beach, and it's really cheap. So we were like, well, let's take that for a month and see what happens. And in this beautiful little village on the lake, very strong, half Muslim, half Christian community, living in perfect peace together. And it was just the most amazing place. We went back again for another month after that, and it's like, yeah, I can't wait to go back and work there again. It's become my absolute favorite place in the world to work.
So it sounds most likely like you guys will team up and make another record at that house.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
As soon as possible.
You literally found a home. Well, thanks for coming to Los Angeles, guys. And we look forward to your return. And congratulations on this latest record. It's called Makes a King. Everybody, it's the very best. And just thanks for hanging out with us today, guys.
Thank you so much for having us. When we walked in, the first thing I said is like, this has been 8 years, in like 8 years finally here.
Nice.
Thank you so much.